السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة خلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله خير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة كل بدعة ضلالة كل ضلالة في النار. Inshallah, tonight we finish up with the last section that we were talking about last time, and the issue that was left regarding the marriage in that specific section was مسألة الغش والخداع, and that is the issue of cheating by giving the wrong information when someone proposes, and the cheating usually, and cheating here we're talking about giving false information, not cheating the other way, but here giving false information and misinforming whether the person who's getting married, the man, or by the woman, or by her wali, or misinforming the woman or the wali by the person who's getting married, the man, about specific issues. So the ulama discussed. There will be a section about that, but he mentioned one issue here, and that is the issue of misinforming about the person, whether telling the man who's getting married that the person he's marrying is a free woman, but it's a slave woman. Someone might, as we said, since slavery is of no existence these days, there is no need to talk about it. But the reason we will mention it is because based on this, there are other rulings that apply for everyone else that will be derived from this issue. Okay? Even though this specific issue is about telling the man who is getting married that we are marrying you a free woman, but she is not. And we will see the hukum and the rulings, what happens, what's the results. The same results to an extent will apply to other issues of cheating and misinforming. So that's why I decided to bring it up tonight inshallah. يقول المؤلف رحمه الله ومن نكح أنا على أنها حرة ثم علم. يعني a woman comes, you see a woman, you like her, and you propose to her. And they tell you she's a free woman, but she was a slave woman. And we know slave woman owned by her master, but they did not tell you that when this happened. Now this issue, alaykum salam, this issue can take three different scenarios. Okay, this issue can take three different scenarios. First, he did the aqd. Okay. They did the contract. They brought the two witnesses, they brought the wali, he approved, she accepted, the man accepted, all that, the mahr agreed. So that is the aqd. They established that, but he did not consummate the marriage. Okay? He did not sleep with her yet. So they just did the contract. Okay? In this situation, lahu al-fasq. Okay, له الفسخ, he can get out of this contract. Just walk out. Alright? And she is not entitled for any mahr. She's not entitled for any mahr. They agreed he's going to give her $1,000. Then he finds out after they establish the contract that before he gives her the money, he walks out. Okay? When he finds out, he walks out. وذلك لقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فلها المهر بما استحل من فرجها. So usually the mahr becomes a must to be paid if the person sleeps with the wife. if the husband sleeps with the wife. Yani if the marriage contract or the contract gets consummated, the marriage gets consummated, then she becomes entitled for that money, for that مهر. والمؤلف قال لأنه عقد لم يرضى به فكان فسخه. الحالة الثانية أن يدخل بها ويخلو بها لكن لم يوجد أولاد. Okay? The second scenario, he gets the contract done, he consummates the marriage, but they do not have kids yet. Okay? They do not have kids yet. And then he finds out. Okay? But in this situation, what is the result? The result is he has the right to walk out, but he is obligated to give the mahr. Okay? He's obligated to give the mahr, again according to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, someone will say, like, why are you going to obligate him to give the mahr if he was cheated in the first place? Okay? If he was cheated in the first place. He pays the mahr to the woman, but he has the right to go back to the wali. And most of the time, if she's a slave woman, her wali will be the master. And usually the master is the one who misinformed. So he has the right to go back to the wali and ask for that money. Okay? But she's entitled for the money for what? For consummating the marriage. The third situation, to have kids. Contract, consummate the marriage, and have kids. So what happens in this situation? عامة العلماء أهل الفقه وأكثر أهل العلم وهو أكثر أقوال الصحابة إنه لا يعلم عنهم مخالف قالوا إن الأولاد أحرام. Okay? The opinion of the most of the Sahaba, even some said there is no difference amongst them in the opinion, okay, that the kids are free. The kids that resulted out of this marriage are free. Okay, يعني they are not to be slaves. But the father still has to pay what they're worth if they were slave. Okay? The father has يعني يفديهم. He has to pay their ransom. Okay? And that is the أحكام. إما بقيمتهم أو بمثلهم يعني. على هذا قال المؤلف فله فسخ النكاح ولا مهر عليه إن فسخ قبل الدخول بها وإن أصابها فلها مهرها أو مهرها كما جاء عن عمر بن الخطاب بن عباس أن عمر قال أيما رجل نكح امرأة بها جنون أو برص أو جذام ومسها فلها صداقها وذلك لزوجها غرم أو غرم على وليه. Okay, so the first situation, he walks out, no mahar. Second situation, contract and consummation, no kids. He walks out if he chooses, but he has to compensate her or give her the mahar. The third situation with the kids, قال المؤلف وإن أولدها فولده حر يفديه بقيمته ويرجع بما غرم على من غره لما صار أولاده. Okay, so the third situation, as we said, if he has kids, the kids are free. And why? They said nikah here, the marriage is fasid, but the contract is correct. Okay, the marriage itself, because there's cheating and misinforming, it's not supposed to take place. But because it met all the requirements and all the conditions, then the marriage is sound. It's a good marriage. As a result, the kids that come out of it are free kids. Now, the third, or the muallif, he says, rahimahullah, وَيُفَرَّقُ بَيْنَهُمَا. He talks about, and they will, يعني, يُفَرَّقْ بَيْنَهُمَا, they separate. Okay? Now, the issue of separation, because he said, since they were not, he was misinformed, then you separate. They need to separate. But the issue of separation, need to be discussed further, because we have to see, maybe they are interested in continuing this marriage. Maybe there are other situations that need to be considered. Because if you remember last time, we spoke about that a free man, a free Muslim, is forbidden to marry a slave woman unless some conditions met. Okay? Free Muslim, free man, is forbidden to marry a slave woman, and unless some conditions are met. And remember the ayah, some of the ulama said 2, some of them said 3, but those who said 2, they combine 2 of the conditions, and that is according to قوله تعالى فمن لم يستطع منكم طولا أن ينكح المحصنات المؤمنات فمما ملكت أيمانكم من فتياتكم المؤمنات. So the conditions first, from the ayah, he cannot afford the mahr for a free woman. He can't give her that much of mahr, and usually the mahr of a free woman is more. So he cannot afford that. And the second thing, he cannot afford to buy a slave woman, because as you know, a slave woman is from مِمَّا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. And if he owns a slave woman, he has the right to have intercourse with her, but he cannot afford to do that, to buy a slave woman. And the third, العنت, خوف العنت, he cannot control himself. He is afraid he might fall in the haram. Such person is allowed, if he is free man, Muslim, allowed to marry a slave woman. But if these conditions are not met, he is not allowed. Okay, he is not allowed. Now, if this person that married was misinformed and ended up marrying a woman, a slave woman, and as Ibn Qudam said, you separate between them, we said if this person does not qualify for these conditions, he does not fit these conditions, he can afford to marry a slave woman, a free woman, he can afford the mahr, he can afford to buy a slave woman, then we say they separate. Okay? They separate, because again, staying together goes against the ayah. Second situation, if after the marriage he becomes qualified, he has X amount of money, this money, can get him to marry a free woman, or can get him a slave woman, to buy a slave woman. Okay? But after he got through this marriage, and when he got married, they told him she's a free woman. So most probably he gave her that mahr that he would give for a free woman. And now he lost, since he slept with her, now he lost, she is entitled for that mahr. So before the marriage, he was not allowed because of his conditions, because he could have afforded. After the marriage, this misinformed marriage, the marriage that he was misinformed, after he got married, and after he consummated the marriage, and after she became entitled for the mahr, he fits the criteria where he is allowed to marry a slave woman. You understand? So in this situation, he stays with her. He has the right. Okay? Because he's qualified now. He's qualified to stay with this woman. يقول المؤلف فإن ولدت بعد الرضا وهو now we're talking about the third situation. They consummate the marriage and they have kids. But he finds out. Okay? He finds out that she's slave. And because he fits the second criteria, that now he's qualified to marry a slave woman after he spent his money, and now he's afraid he cannot control himself, he says, now I know she's a slave woman, I fit the criteria that Allah said to be able to marry a slave woman, so I will stay with her. I will stay with her. So that's what the mu'allif قال. He's talking about. فإن ولدت بعد الرضا قال فإن كان مما يباح له نكاح الإماء فولدت فأولاده بعد العلم يكونون أرقاء. Okay? So he gets married, or now he finds out that she's a slave. Okay? She's slave. Then he decides and he chooses to continue with this marriage. Then the kids after that are slaves. So now you see why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want free men to marry slave women. Okay? So it's very important to understand with this. So that's why the ulama said they separate. They should separate. Why? Because if they stay together, the kids are slaves. And the religion is concerned about ending slavery. So that is the point where the ulama went to the opinion that you should separate either way. Alright? So that is, that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear that if you do not meet this criteria, you do not get married. You're not allowed to marry a slave woman, because the results will be slaves. Yeah? Very important. Now we start a new section. So now if you look at this, as you will see later when we talk about the section or the chapter of being cheated into the marriage, and you were misinformed, we will see that the ulama took these things and they applied them. Not the slavery part, but the hukum. If he can stay, if he can walk out, if he's obligated to give the mahr, if he's not. And that's why I decided to mention this. So when we get that part, we have a little background. Now the next part, since he talked about the marriage, the conditions, the khutbah, proposing these things, you got cheated on, concerning this issue. Now he talks about who you're not allowed to get married. Okay? People you're not allowed to marry. Because you don't want to propose to someone you cannot marry. Alright? So now he wants to tell you the people that you're not allowed to get married to. And it's very important, we have an idea about these things. قال المصنف رحمه الله باب المحرمات في النكاح وهن الأمهات والبنات والأخوات وبنات الأخوة وبنات الأخوات والعمات والخالات وأمهات النساء وحلائل الآباء والأبناء والربائب المدخول بأمهاتهن ويحرم من الرضاع ما يحرم من النسب وبنات المحرمات محرمات إلا بنات العمات والخالات وأمهات النساء وحلائل الآباء والأبناء وأمهاتهن محرمات إلا البنات والربائب وحلائل الآباء والأبناء ومن وطأ امرأة حلالا أو حراما حرمت على أبيه وابنه وحرمت عليه أمهاتها وبناتها أو حرمت عليه أمهاتها وبناتها. Who can repeat for me? Alright? Now here the author rahimahullah telling you what's not allowed to marry. You as a man, the women you're not allowed to marry, and you can apply that for the women, the men they're not allowed to marry. But he put it in a very difficult fashion. Okay? So inshallah what we will do is we will categorize them. Categorize people you're not allowed because of who they are. And there are people you're not allowed, there are two types, two major types. People or women you're not allowed to marry because of their relationship to you. Because you're born into this relationship. The day you're born, they had this relationship with you. And they are women you're not allowed to marry because of marriage. Because you got involved in a marriage, and that marriage made you not allowed to marry specific women. Okay? Got it? Things you're born into without choice, and women you chose to make them haram on you. Alright? We'll talk about that. Okay. محرمات في النكاح تنقسم إلى قسمين. The women. I'm going to use the women, but here we're talking about men and women. Talking about women for men and men for women. But the people you're not allowed to marry, and they're going to use women just to make it easier. So we're talking about a man who he is not allowed to marry, as Allah mentioned in the Quran. So the women that you're not allowed to marry as a man are two types. Yani they fall into two categories. Women you're not allowed to marry because of al-nasab. Okay? Nasab. And actually, more general than al-nasab, because al-nasab might fall into a different category, they are women you're not allowed to marry forever. And they are women you're not allowed to marry temporary. Okay? Women at any point of your life you're not allowed to marry. And there are other women, some things you do in your life make you not able to marry them. And once this thing goes away, you will be able to marry them. And sometimes you will never, all right? If the situation continues. So the two main things, women you're not allowed to marry ever, and women you're not allowed to marry muaqqat or temporary. Now the women you're not allowed to marry ever, okay? Two types. One, muharramat بسبب النسب. Okay? The women that are you're forbidden to marry. Now remember, two types, forever and temporary. The ones forever or permanently divided into two types as well. One reason is in nasab, because of the relationship. Okay? Because of your relationship to them. Nasab يعني the blood, if I could use that. Okay? Now, there are 7 types of women who falls in this category. 7 types of women because of your relation, because you are related to them when you were born, yani always related to them, because of al-nasab, then you cannot marry them. 7 types, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them clear. First, al-ummahat, the mothers. Okay? And when we say al-ummahat, that means your mother, her mother, yani your grandmother, her mother, all that you're not allowed to marry. Okay? Both sides, yani your mother and your father, your mother's mother, your mother's mother's mother, your father's mother, your father's mother. These are the ummahat, as Allah says, حرمت عليكم أمهاتكم. حرمت عليكم أمهاتكم. ثانيا البنات وبناتكم. Okay? Your daughters and their daughters and their daughters and their daughters, as far as it goes. So any daughter that comes out of your daughter, any girl comes out of her or off of her, is haram, as far as we can go. Alright? So your daughters and your granddaughters and your great-granddaughters and on, you're not. And that is what Allah means when He says وَبَنَاتُكُمْ. ثالثا الأخوات, your sisters, whether it's full sister, whether it's half sister. Okay? All those you're not allowed. We'll talk about that. Because here we're talking about the nasab. We said the nasab, يعني you're born as is. When you were born, your sister was your sister. When you were born, your mother was your mother. Okay? Or when your sister was born, she was your sister. So there was no action to lead her to become your sister. That's what we mean by nasab. So we don't want to go. But we'll talk about rida'a. Okay? So, ummahatukum, your mothers, and as far as they can go, your grandmothers, great-grandmother, from your father or your mother's side. Then, your daughters, their daughters, your great-granddaughters, your great-granddaughters. Okay? Then third, khawatukum, your sisters, half-sister, full sister, your mother's daughter, but not your father, that's half a sister. Your father's daughter, not your mother's, half a sister. And your father married your mother as a second wife or second marriage, and he had a daughter from previous marriage, that's your half sister. طيب. If your father, when he married your mother, We leave it there. Okay? We leave it there. Okay. Your father married a woman, and this woman had a daughter. What percentage is she your sister? No, that's not my question. What percentage is she your sister? 0. So you can marry her? Yes, because she has different father and mother, and you have different father and mother. Because people they're raised in the same house, and they're always raised as brothers and sisters, but actually they are not. All right? Okay. 4th, banatul ukht, the daughters of your sisters, يعني your nieces. Okay? Your nieces and their daughters and their daughters and daughters of the daughters of the daughters. Okay? So your nieces you're not allowed to marry. وبنات الأخت. خامسا بنات الأخ. Okay? The daughter, your nieces on your brother's side, and your brother's daughters and your sister's daughters. All right? Those are called nieces. All right? Those are not allowed. You're not allowed to marry them or their daughters. سادسا العمات, the aunts. Okay? يعني عمة is the paternal aunt, يعني the sister of your father. Okay? So العمات you're not allowed to marry. And their daughters? You're not allowed to marry their daughters too?
I'm talking about myself compared to my father. No, you're not.
Yeah. Your daughters, their daughters, your aunt's daughters, you're allowed to marry. That's your cousin. Here in America, يعني, they tell you, right? Huh?
It's weird.
Yeah, they tell you it's incest.
But some states they allowed. Now 25 state was until last year.
Now it's legal?
Yes, takes.
Yeah, so anyway, يعني, the one of them is willing to have a relationship with Iyadu Billah, his sister or his mother. But when it comes to cousins, they tell you يعني, disgusting. There is no يعني, on any of that. So 6 is the aunts, and 7 khalat. Khalat, your aunts, maternal aunts. يعني your mother's sisters. Okay? Your mother's sisters. وعماتكم وخالاتكم. Alright, so the first type, those who are forbidden for you to marry forever, temporary, permanently, ever. And the first type of that is in nasib, because of the blood. The second type is because of a reason. Okay, there's a reason that took place before this reason or this issue took place, this event, they were okay for you to marry. But once this event took place, they became haram. Alright? And when they become haram for good. Because we will see there are events, they become haram temporary. But here, those events, because we're still talking about the very first type, and that is permanent hurma. يعني permanently cannot marry them. First, الملاعنة. Okay? الملاعنة. And الملاعنة is when a man accuses his wife of cheating, of zina. So you know, as the ayat in Surah An-Nur, the beginning of Surah An-Nur, that he has to have 4 witnesses, right? So he cannot do that. He did not have 4 witnesses. Then he testify 4 times that he's telling the truth. Okay? And for her to protect her, and the 5th time, the la'na of Allah on him. And for her as well, she to get out of it, of the accusation, she swear 4 times that she's telling the truth, and the curse of Allah on her if she's lying. Okay? This is called mula'ana. And the ulama, when a man does this to his wife and the wife does this to her husband, they are not allowed to be together again. Even if she gets married 3 or 4 times after that, they are not allowed to be married again. Okay, so there is an event. They were married, but there's an event that took place, and that's al-mula'ana, that led for them to not be able to marry again forever. Alright? يقول الله سبحانه وتعالى: أربع شهادات بالله إنه لمن الصادقين والخامسة أن لعنة الله عليه إن كان من الكاذبين ويدرأ عنها العذاب أن تشهد أربع شهادات بالله إنه لمن الكاذبين والخامسة أن غضب الله عليه إن كان من الصادقين. As we have seen. قال الزهري: مضت السنة في المتلاعنين أن يفرق بينهما. ثانيا الرضاع, breastfeeding. So before breastfeeding, if you were to grow up, يعني your baby, you grow up, you can marry the daughter of that woman who did not breastfeed you. But if it happens that you got breastfed by this woman, that's it. Her kids, like your brothers and sisters. And I will give you, because people always ask, is she haram for me? Is he haram? I drank from his aunt, from his mother, from his sisters, from, you know. So it's very confusing. So inshallah at the end, I'll summarize it to you, يعني very easy. And inshallah you will remember at any time. Alright. Rida, the breastfeeding. This is not the issue to talk about how many breastfeedings and how many times and all that. We will have that section inshallah, or that sub-chapter, when we talk about that. But the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, يحرم من الرضاع ما يحرم من النسب. Prophet ﷺ said, what is haram because of the blood relationship is haram because of the breastfeeding. So you take the same categories, the 7 categories, and you apply them to those. And we will talk, make it easier for you to understand. But in general, the things that become haram, the women become haram permanently because of an event, 2 events. Mula'ana and al-rida'. And then the third one is when there is a contract. Of course, marriage contract. If a marriage contract takes place, just the contract, then certain women become haram. For example, if you marry a woman, you do the contract, you consummate the marriage, she's your wife. You divorce her. Can you marry her mother? You can't. That's your mother-in-law, and she will be your mother-in-law forever. Even if you divorce her daughter, you're not allowed to marry her. Like if you marry the mother, you live with her, and then you divorce her, can you go back and marry her daughter? No. Why? Because you're her father-in-law. Father-in-law, or stepdad, your stepdad. Okay. So when the marriage contract takes place and the consummation of the marriage, yani the intercourse take place, then either side become haram. So if you marry a mother, you cannot consummate the marriage, you cannot marry the daughter after you divorce. If you marry the daughter, you consummate the marriage, you cannot marry and divorce, you cannot marry the mother. Alright? That's clear. Now when the contract takes place but the consummation does not go through, and you come to the masjid, you did contract, before you walk out of the masjid you start fighting, you say you're divorced. End of story. You never consummated the marriage. Then here there is details. If your contract is with the mother, and you don't, yani a woman who has a daughter, and you did not consummate the marriage, and you just did the contract, then you split, you divorce her without consummating the marriage, then you are allowed to marry her daughter. Okay? If you do contract on the daughter, and then you split, you leave her, you divorce her before consummating the marriage, you are not allowed to marry the mother. Why? We'll talk about it. Okay? So that is little details we need to be. So which one of those two we are concerned about now? Mary doing the contract on the daughter or on the mother? That's what we're talking about permanently. On the daughter. So if you do a contract on the daughter and then you divorce, once you do the contract, her mother becomes haram. Okay? Her mother becomes haram just by doing the contract. Alright? Very clear? Alright. Now, also add to that زوجة الأب أو زوجة الجد. Okay? زوجة الأب أو زوجة الجد. قال الله تعالى ولا تنكحوا ما نكح آباؤكم من النساء وتحرم زوجة الابن وزوجة ابن الابن وإن نزل لقوله تعالى وحلائل أبنائكم الذين من أصلابكم. حلائل يعني أزواج يعني الزوجات. Okay? وتحرم عليه أم زوجته وجدتها بمجرد العقد. So here we have more. Okay? So you have زوجة الأب, the wife of the father. Okay? The wife, if the contract takes place, then the wife of the father and the wife of the grandfather. Okay? And the wife of the son and the wife of the grandson, as well as the girl, her mother. Alright? The mother of the wife. All these are haram. Alright. قل الله سبحانه وتعالى ولا تنكحوا ما نكح آباءكم من النساء إلا ما قد سلف. You see here there is استثناء. استثناء يعني إلا ما قد سلف. Exception. And do not marry the women that your fathers got married to. By العقد. If there is a contract, that's it. They become haram. Permanent. What they used to do in Jahiliyyah, when someone's father dies, he'll go and he will take a piece of sheet or a sheet and he will throw it on the woman, on his father's wife. And what that indicates that she is his. So no one will become allowed to touch her but him. Because the woman before Islam used to be inherited. She would be taken as a piece of furniture without respect. So he will go, his father, let's say his father was rich, got married to a young woman. So once his father dies, he'll go to his father's house and take a sheet and throw it on the woman. And this will mean that this is mine, I'm taking her. And no one touches her after that. This becomes his. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, and do not marry the women that your fathers married, except what took place before. And that's okay. Because there was no rules, there was no regulation before Islam. But some people are married those women already, and they're living with them, they have kids. So Islam did not want to destroy that marriage. If whatever took place in the past, overlooked. But from now on, now you know the rulings and the ahkam, you cannot violate. Alright? Now, fourth, those that are forbidden because of aqd and consummation. Because the contract and the consummation took place. Alright? So those things that become forbidden, the women become forbidden permanently, okay? Permanently, because of an event. Therefore, one, mula'ana, so far. Two, rida, breastfeeding. Mula'ana, yani when you go testify against your wife and swear 5 times and all that. Third is just the contract itself. So if the contract takes place, that's it. They become haram. So for example, if your father has a contract of marriage with a woman, she becomes haram for you to marry. If your grandfather has a contract with a woman, then he does not continue, haram for you to marry that woman. Your son, his son, the same thing. And also for a woman to marry a woman's mother, if you did the contract with the woman and then you split. Now the fourth that become haram, if you do the contract and you consummate the marriage, then a woman becomes haram, and that woman is the mother of the wife. Okay? The daughter of the wife, the daughter. The mother is only the contract. The daughter. So if you go and you do contract on, if you do a contract on a mother, you're not allowed to marry the daughter. Whatever happens after that. If you do contract on a daughter, on a mother, and you break it, then you can marry the daughter. But if you do contract on a mother and you consummate it, once you consummate it, you're not allowed to marry that daughter at all. Clear? It's a little confusing, but okay. Let's make it clear. Just this example for details, because it's very critical. Because it's the most common too that might happen. Ahmed went to propose to, let's say, Aisha. So he proposed, Aisha's family agreed. So they did the contract. A week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, they did not consummate the marriage, they just did the nikah contract. They did not agree, so Ahmed decided to leave Aisha, to break that contract. That is divorce will take place. Can Ahmed marry Aisha's mother later on?
No.
No. Good. Ahmed, after the contract with Aisha, they agreed, everything is perfect, they got married, they had kids, or they didn't have kids, it doesn't matter, they moved in, she moved in with in his house, then they divorced. Can he marry her mother? No. Because it's all at the contract. Now, let's reverse it. Ahmed comes and Aisha thinks he's going to propose to her, but he proposed to her mother. Just in the first, that he doesn't know Aisha, alright? Aisha, young girl, whatever. So he proposes to the mother. A week later, it doesn't work out. He splits. He says, it's over, I divorce you. He walks out. Can he come later on and propose to Aisha? Yes. Good job. Alright? Now, Ahmed comes and he proposed to Aisha's mother. And everything is perfect. They get married, they live together happily for a few months. Then he divorces. They fight. Okay? He divorces her. Can he come later and propose for her daughter, for Aisha? No. So with the daughter, obviously, the marriage has to take effect with the mother for the daughter to be haram. But with the daughter, if the contract takes place, that is enough for the mother to become haram. يقول الله سبحانه وتعالى وربائبكم اللاتي في حجوركم من نسائكم اللاتي دخلتم بهن فإن لم تكونوا دخلتم بهن فلا جناح عليكم. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah, He says it's haram for you to marry ربائبكم. الربيبة, it's the step-daughter. For a man, الربيبة is the step-daughter. Whether she's young or old. Whether she lived in his house or she didn't. That is ربيبة. So, ربائبكم اللاتي في حجوركم من نسائكم اللاتي دخلتم بهن. So these are haram. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts the condition that the Rabiba, yani the step-daughter, obviously she's the daughter of your wife that you had intercourse with.
She's not a stepdaughter yet.
La, by al-aqd, if you do the contract, your stepdaughter now. You propose to a woman, she has a daughter, you propose, she agreed, you have a contract, she's your stepdaughter. So now, you consummated the marriage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts that condition. Allati dakhaltum bihin, yani you had intercourse with, those stepdaughters are haram. But she can be stepdaughter and you married her mother on papers, but you did not consummate the marriage yet. That is the next part, as Allah says, فَإِن لَمْ تَكُونُوا دَخَلْتُمْ بِهِنَّ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ. But if you did not have intercourse with the mothers yet, يعني you married them in contracts, on papers, if I could use the term, and contract doesn't have to be on a paper, okay? But you married the mother with on papers, but you never consummated the marriage and you divorced, then Allah says, then there is no blame to marry their daughters. Alright? Okay. So in this ayah, it becomes clear that if you consummate the marriage, the daughter becomes haram. If you consummate the marriage with the mother, the daughter becomes haram. If you do not consummate the marriage with the mother, you just contract and you divorce, then you can marry her. Alright? Now, what is the hikmah? Why the difference here?
There's no blood between the
There's no blood in either way.
because if you begin the beginning, it's going to be like his dad. When it's never happened with the mother, there's nothing there.
But where's the blood? Because he slept with her?
Yes.
No, that is not blood. She didn't. That intercourse did not result in a baby. When we say blood, it's the marriage that results in that. Okay, it's blood coming through. There's the same blood running in the same, as they call it, the same blood running in the same person or people, the same family, the same lineage, but they're not. She has different name, like different last name, come from different place. That's not the reason. The hikmah, wallahu a'lam, as the ulama said, they said the mother is more willing to forgive and more willing to forget. So if someone proposed to her, married her, and never consummated, and then he left, it's allowed for him to come and marry his daughter, right? So they said, perhaps because the mother's heart and she does not care much, and more she cares about the happiness of her daughter, she will not have much problem with that. But on the other hand, the daughter, if someone has a contract with her and then he leaves her to marry her mother, because she's a daughter, she's not going to have that much sympathy toward the mother as much as a mother will have toward the daughter. That's why if you look in the Quran, you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always, as we said before, always telling the kids to love their parents, because it's not expected much from, because they might neglect it. But Allah does not tell the parents to take care of the kids, because it's known. Usually parents take care of the kids because of the sympathy they have toward them. But the sons, the daughters, usually don't do that toward their parents as much. And a father might spend every penny he has because his son is sick with a certain disease, and then at the end his son dies, and he'll never regret it. Okay? But on the other hand, the son always is complaining because he's taking care of his father, because his father is old, and perhaps he's spending on his father from his father's money, and he's always complaining. So usually the mother is more willing to overlook and forget as long as she sees her daughter happy. But vice versa, it's very difficult. So that is what the ulama said, the hikmah from that. The second type is women that are forbidden temporarily. Okay, so now we covered the women forbidden permanently. So we said two types. One type because of the blood, and we said there's 7 types. Your mothers, your daughters, your sisters, your aunts, maternal and paternal, and your nieces. Okay, the daughters of the brothers and the daughters of the sisters. Then the second type, women forbidden to marry, or they become haram permanently because of an event that took place. Mula'ana, breastfeeding, aqd, contract, and contract plus consummation. Now we talk about women forbidden to marry temporary. يعني something takes place, you're not allowed to marry them. But then once this thing that took place is invalid anymore, or disappears, or it's not fit anymore, or it's not active anymore, or you change your mind about it, then again they become permissible for you to marry. Okay, let's see. يحرم على الرجل أن يجمع بين المرأة وعمتها وبين المرأة وخالتها أو بين المرأة وأختها. It's forbidden for a person to marry a woman and her aunt. It's forbidden her father's sister. It's forbidden for a man to marry a woman and her father's sister. It's forbidden for him to marry a woman and her mother's sister. And it's forbidden for him to marry a woman and her sister. Alright. If he marries a woman, he cannot marry her sister. But if the wife dies, he can marry the sister. Got it? That's why it's temporary. If a man marries a woman, cannot marry her aunt. But if his woman, if he divorces her or she dies, he can marry her aunt. Alright? So that's what we mean by temporary. يقول الله سبحانه وتعالى وأن تجمعوا بين الأختين إلا ما قد سلف. And here's istithna again. Allah says, and it's haram to combine between two sisters in marriage except what took place already. Now does that mean what took place? And if before this ayah was revealed, if I had married two sisters, if I had in my house two sisters, my wives, does that mean I can continue married to them, or I have to leave one? You have to choose. You have to choose. Okay? You have to choose. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يجمع بين المرأة وعمتها ولا بين المرأة وخالتها, as we had mentioned. And this is يعني by nature a woman is jealous. Even if you bring her if you bring a second wife that is not even related to her, she'll be jealous, and that might create some hard feelings. But she's not related to her, so there is no relationships that gonna be severe. Okay, she's not related to her in the first place. But if you marry a woman and her sister, that might relate to, now they were sisters, now they're enemies. First they were aunt and niece, now they're enemies. So that is the hikmah from that. Second, when we talk about the combining, so the first type of women not allowed temporary, first type is combining. And the first example of combining, a mother with her aunt, a mother with her sister. Second type of combining, who's smart? Who can think? No. No. We said that. The first type we said to combine a woman with her relative, with her sister, with her aunt. Okay? The second type, huh? لا. Those محرمات in the first place.
No, but the father married women, the son married أختها.
Okay.
Yeah, they can't have
لا. Oh, he cannot marry his father's wife.
No, and this is what نفرض رجل married lady واحدة.
طيب.
وجاء ابنه married أختها.
طيب.
Yeah.
ما في إشكال.
Yeah, ما في إشكال.
ما في إشكال. أنت بتعقل. No, to have more than 4. You cannot combine more than 4. But once you marry 4, you're temporarily not allowed. Who? All the other women in the world. But once you divorce one or one dies, then so it was forbidden for you to marry another woman temporary. Alright? Clear? So that's when we talk about combining. The second type, what is temporary because of an event, and it stands as long as this event is standing. And first, it's not allowed for a person to marry a woman in her iddah until the iddah is over. A woman who got divorced in her iddah, a woman whose husband died, she's in iddah. Okay? You're not allowed to marry her while she's in her iddah. Alright? Okay. Second, zaniya. You're not allowed to marry a zaniya. Zaniya is a woman who commits the zina, fornication. You're not allowed to marry her until she repents. Until she's sincerely repenting, you cannot marry her. الزاني لا ينكح إلا زاني. Only a fornicator will marry a fornicator. Yani that's his type. And a Muslim is not, you're not allowed to marry a woman who is promiscuous. You cannot marry a woman, pick her from a nightclub and marry her. Okay? You cannot. Even if it's from the people of the book, even if it's Muslim. Yani you know a Muslim woman, but she sleeps around. Iyadu billah. You're not allowed to marry her. So that is the advice to all the brothers, and perhaps our women, our Muslim women are chaste and good. But that is a very serious condition, whether she's Muslim or she's not. So they come and they argue, we want to marry Christian, it's allowed in the Quran. Yes, it's allowed, but did you read the conditions that it's allowed? One of the conditions, وَلَا مُتَّخِذَاتِ أَخْدَانِ. They don't have boyfriends. And usually, when a Muslim wants to marry a Christian, usually, I don't say all the time, but usually, okay, they have a relationship. An illegitimate relationship. So you're zani, and she's zani. So how are you going to marry her? So you're not chaste, and she's not chaste. You're not allowed. Unless you both repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you could disconnect your relationship together, and you prove to Allah that you're clean and you're repenting. And the ulama talked about the iddah and all that, but the main important thing is repentance. Very important. Or you find someone who knows, a Muslim guy who knows his friend, and he has a girlfriend, then she splits from the boyfriend, and he goes proposes to her. How can you do that? This is a woman going between man and man. So that is how. So she has to be chaste. So if she's clean woman, honorable woman, then you are allowed to marry her. Period. But if she's zani, if she's committing this haram, you're not allowed to marry her temporarily until she repents and she returns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يقول الله تعالى والزانية لا ينكحها إلا زان أو مشرك. So if you want to be with those. Third, it's haram for a man to marry a woman that he divorced 3 times, temporary or permanently. So how can he marry her?
He can't تتزوج واحد ثاني تجهيش.
محل تجهيش محل محل يسمى المحل. But that's ملعون. But anyway, we'll talk about that issue. But if a man, a Muslim man is allowed to divorce his wife 3 times. If he divorced her the first time, he can still take her back. If he divorced her the second time, he can still take her back. If he decides to take her back while she's in her iddah, we're going to say 3 months, but even though different opinions, we're going to just say 3 months. If he takes her back within the 3 months, no contract is needed. They just continue the way they are. Some of the ulama said, you testify, you bring shuhud. If you divorce her second time and she's still in her iddah, and when a woman in her iddah after first or second, she stays in her husband's house, and he's still her husband, you can take her back. If you take her back within, no new contract. But if you divorce her first time or second time, and her iddah passes, and the 3 months or the 3 menstruating periods, and then you decide to take her back, then you need new contract, you need new shuhud, you need the wali, you need mahr, all that. Alright? Now if you divorce her the 3rd time, she has iddah, the same amount, same length, but she doesn't stay in your house. And you're not allowed to touch her anymore, and you're not allowed to be alone with her, because you can't marry her again. Alright? So in this situation, if you divorce your wife 3 times, you cannot marry her again unless, that's why it's temporary, unless she moves on with her life, she gets married to another guy, and it's all with good intention. I'm getting married to settle. I'm not getting married today so I can be divorced tomorrow so I can come back to you after tomorrow. No. I get married, just someone proposed to me, we're fine, he's a nice guy, I married him, marry a year, two, a month, two, whatever, it doesn't work out, so they split, then the first husband can go and marry her again. So she has to marry another man in between without any plotting. Is not paying someone $200, just marry me and divorce me later. And that person, the Prophet ﷺ said, مَلْعُونَ مُحَلِّلْ وَالْمُحَلَّلْ لَهُ. Alright? Alright. Fourth, أن تزوج المرأة المحرمة ما دامت في إحرام. A woman who's in her ihram for Hajj, for Umrah, it's not allowed to marry her. But once she's out of ihram, you can marry her. That's why temporary. 6, you're not allowed to marry a woman who's not Muslim, Christian, or Jew. So a Hindu woman, you're not allowed to marry, period. But it's temporary. Why? Because she can become Muslim. Alright? Then she becomes allowed. So it's not forbidden forever. Because if she becomes Muslim, you can marry her. But your aunt cannot wake up one day and say, I don't want to be your aunt anymore. That's why it's permanent. Alright? 6, it's not allowed for a Muslim to marry a slave woman, as we said, unless the conditions are met. So if he was rich one day, he's not allowed. He loses all his money in the stock market, and now he cannot afford mahr for a free woman, and he cannot control himself, and he cannot buy a slave woman, then he becomes allowed. You see? Right. يقول المؤلف ومن وطأ امرأة حلالا أو حراما حرمت على أبيه وابنه. Okay. الوطأ يعني to have intercourse with a woman can be of two types, either halal or haram. يعني وطأ because you're married, or because she's amah, she's slave woman, or haram, zina. Alright? Either way, if you have intercourse with a woman in halal way or in a haram way, whether you're married to her or you're not married to her, or she's not your slave, if this takes place, then she becomes haram for your father and your son to marry. Period. Whether it's halal or haram, she becomes haram for your kids to marry, or your father. Okay. And also, it becomes haram for you to marry her mother or her daughter. If you commit, obviously if you marry a woman and you sleep with her, you cannot marry her mother. If you just do a contract with a woman, you cannot marry her mother, right? If you consummate the marriage, you cannot marry the mother or the daughter, because now she's your stepdaughter. But if you consummate, if you have zina with a woman right away, she cannot marry your father or your son, and you cannot marry her mother or her daughter. Alright? Very clear. Okay.
بالنسبة للطلاق إذا طلقت 3 مرات، بينما الطلاق إذا قلت مرة واحدة تطالق، مش إنه.
قول مرة ثانية.
بالنسبة للطلاق.
نعم.
الإنسان من يطلق يقول هذا.
مرة واحدة يعني يرميهم كذا.
مرة واحدة بإمكانهم يراجعون.
هاي خلاف بين أهل العلم. لكن الله أعلم يعني الأرجح هو رماهم 3 مرات كذا طالق 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 يعني تحسب واحدا تيسير يعني. Three. He gets a free count, full count again. he marries again, they get full count. All right. I just got some issues just to discuss about. طيب. About الرضاعة, some other issues we discuss all the time. But about الرضاعة, the question is, what is haram? What is halal? Because of الرضاعة, who becomes haram to marry and who stays, you're still allowed to marry? Just to summarize it very quick. The people who are involved in breastfeeding, and when we talk about breastfeeding, يعني for a woman to breastfeed someone who's not her son. That's what we mean, all right? Someone who's not her son, strange kid, her neighbor's son, her neighbor's daughter, whoever. Because I don't want to say a son who's related to her, because then we get a little more complicated. But in general, the people who are involved in breastfeeding. صاحب اللبن, who's that? الزوج. Okay? الزوج. That belongs to him. Alright? The husband of that breastfeeding woman. The breastfeeding woman, and that is المرضع or المرضع. And the third, الراضع. The baby who's breastfeeding, the baby who's getting breastfed, the woman who's breastfeeding, and her husband. So those are the three that are involved in this scenario. Okay? So who become haram for who? We summarize. Okay? First, every person in the world, يعني in general, will have something called usul, and something called furu', and something called hawashi or hashiyah. The usul, يعني his origins, يعني his fathers, his grandfathers, his great-grandfathers, those called usul. Furu', whoever comes from him, his lineage, his offspring, his kids and their kids and their kids. Al-hashiyah, everyone else, his brothers, his sisters, his aunts, his uncles, those are al-hashiyah. Alright, so now every one of those, the kid who got breastfed has furu' usul, when he grows up يعني, will have furu' usul and hashiyah. The woman who breastfed also has those three types of relatives, as well as the father. Okay. الرضاع لا يؤثر في حواشي وأصول الراضع. Okay. For the person who got breastfed, the breastfeeding does not affect in his usul or his hashi. يعني it does not affect his father and his great-grandfather and those, or his brothers and sisters and his aunt and his uncles and his whoever. Got it? يعني whether he got breastfed or he's not, his father and grandfather and aunt and his brothers and sisters and aunt, they're still the same hukum before or after. So he can marry the woman who breastfed. His uncle can marry. So we do not say, so he breastfed with her, that means her daughters, his sisters, right? So his uncle cannot marry those daughters because that means he's their uncle. No. Yeah. So the only people get affected from from the breastfeeding person side, the only people are his offspring. Yeah. So his kids cannot marry his sister from al-rida'a because she's their aunt. Alright? Got it? Yeah. So inshallah we pray and we can finish this specific after. So the brother can pray with us inshallah. Alright? Okay, make it a